And hello and welcome back to significantly later than I originally intended. My computer went poof. And basically just a lot of the stuff I had been trying to juggle, life-wise and the channel-wise, sort of just at that moment collapsed in on itself. And I haven't done this in a while as a result. Partially because I've had less motivation to come back to this. Also partially because recording on my PC has always been a bit of a gamble. So getting that set up again and seeing if that works properly. Like, I don't know if you can see these little flashing green and white stuff in the corner. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I'm not sure if that's part of the recording software that I never noticed before. Or I have something set up wrong and you guys won't see. Or if it's just part of the screen and it'll be capturing that too. I don't know. But yeah, I am going to finish the game at the very least. I have full intentions to do that. How long that's going to take, I don't know. I might take a very different, much more conservative schedule in terms of getting stuff out. It might be something... I have basically... It's been a couple weeks of me just sort of taking a little bit of a break and trying to think about what I want to do with the channel. I'm not at a decision point. I'm not going to stop the channel. I just need something that's a bit more within my means nowadays, between everything else in my life. But it's because it's not like I want to stop doing it, but hey, let's keep going. The game's still here, so let's not have things end on an unfinished note. Last time, something happened and I honestly don't remember what. Shinto looked up at the huge white building and sighed loudly. AH Tokyo General Hospital. After Gurusu's report, he decided to visit himself. Shinjo and Kurisu? It was almost midnight. Visiting hours were long over, and he didn't have an official warrant. He was entirely here of his own volition. Kurisu's report? Huh. But as he saw it, he was never getting a warrant the usual way. So this was his only shot. Oh, so that all fell through? Normally, he'd want to slowly, painstakingly build up a case, but it seemed to him that searching the hospital was so important that there just wasn't time to spare.
久野里美代の話が本当であることをまず確かめる。そうすれば、令状なんていくらでも出るようになるはずだ。
I gotta be honest, I completely forgot that was the name of a character in the game, because he didn't say Labco. After his own investigations, he found something strange had started happening here in 2007, 2 years before the earthquake. At the time, there was a treatment facility in Shibuya called the Arc Heart Medical Association that was involved in some kind of cult. Arc Heart. On the surface, it was a mental health clinic staffed with talented doctors from university hospitals. There's no way to know what they'd actually been doing, but evidently some people suspected they were brainwashing troubled patients. I mean, it's an interesting theory. I wonder what happened to make people think brainwashing specifically. But suddenly the facility was reborn as a hospital with a non-profit assisted living facility. And all the doctors that Arc Heart Medical had fired were rehired at AH Tokyo General Hospital. And then 6 years ago, there's the New Generation Madness. Fifth victim in that case. Who cares about the name? Unless that's relevant, I don't know. The victim of the so-called brain-dead case who'd been kept alive for a week after his brain was removed. Yeah. He'd worked at AH Tokyo General Hospital. Oh, okay.
一体なんだこの気味の悪い符号は。
There is too much that seems suspicious.
こういう時、先輩ならどうする?
And then he shook his head. Do it your own way. That's what they would have said. They. Either way, if he could get proof of what was in the facility's basement, the case would take a whole different turn. Even if there's something big lurking in the shadows behind this case, if he presented incontrovertible proof, the police would have no choice but to act. It wasn't just about the facility, after all. There are a lot of people involved, too. The lives, the dignity of the victims who'd been turned into test subjects also mattered.
人体実験か。胸くその悪い話だ。
Every year, almost 100,000 people went missing. If some of them had been forced into these experiments, that was a big problem.
それじゃあ一ついきますか。
100,000 people in Japan? Man, it's like that's a lot of people. But when you also think about it from like the overall population of the world, it's amazing how big of numbers you can get, and it's still a relatively small sliver of the entire world, that sort of thing. Or even like a country. I wonder if it's 100,000 globally or in Japan specifically. His voice was somehow relaxed yet driven as he headed into the hospital. He learned and memorized the location of the facility from lab coat. He snuck into the ER loading zone and headed into the basement. The temperature there was clearly different from the areas above. And then he went into the autopsy room. Is this the...
確か、ここに地下への入り口があると。
Right. This is the entrance. You opened the burger box and saw the card reader inside.
こいつか。
He held the card key that lab coat had given him. And he heard the sound of opening door.
なるほどね。こりゃ尋常じゃないな。
There's a hidden staircase in the back of the autopsy room. A part of him hadn't believed it until he'd seen it for himself, but now he's essentially sure. A normal hospital wouldn't need something like this. Shinjo stopped for the moment to take a breath, then headed down the stairs. There's an old hallway at the bottom. It smelled of mold and dust. When he turned on the pen light, he saw that it was an old facility and the walls were falling apart.
でも間違いなく、ここは使われている。
If no one visits a building, it rots away. Unless someone uses it every day, it won't last long. But this place was different. It was old, but he was nearly certain someone was using it.
確か、この先だと言ってたな。
Shinjo followed the directions that Labcoat had given him as he headed towards his goal. His first stop was the monitoring room, which would have critical information on the facility. He wanted the data on the computer there, which the Labcoat hadn't gotten for some reason. And then he wanted to find the room where the victims of the experiments were being kept. He turned down the many corridors as he headed for a destination. So like rooms he saw on the way concerned him, but they could wait for later. Right now his biggest job was to get the evidence he needed.
ここか。
Shinjo finally found the spot he was looking for. He used his car key to unlock the door. And then he swallowed and put his hand on the doorknob. This place is probably under fairly high alert relative to before, right? When he got inside, he saw...
No!
He quickly ran to the other room, the prison where Yamazo Yuki had kept the test subjects.
冗談じゃない。まさか。
He quickly found the room and flung open the door. Okay, so I guess I'm confused. Did he go in and then they just sort of skipped over him getting the information? Or did he open the door, saw something, then ran away? It's sort of unclear. And then he stood still in astonishment. There was... nothing there! Okay, high alert, for sure. Wow, okay. Wow, wow, wow. No victims, no beds. None of the things that lab coat had told him about. Because we attracted so much attention, they knew we were here. And then they decided, okay, well, let's put it somewhere else. The monitoring room had been empty too. There were no security cameras, no computers. Nothing at all. All that remained was the simple fact that there's nothing left at all. Fun. Okay, well, they're definitely well organized.
なあ、宮代。部活行くんだろ?
What's that, like, it's probably days since we were there, right?
もちろん、今日はいろいろと事件について整理したいんだ。
Wait, I thought our club was cancelled. Suspended at least.
んじゃ、行こうぜ。
あ、悪いけど先行っててくれ。
なんだ、用でもあんのか?
用ってか、今日掃除当番。
I pointed to the other students who were moving the desks and sweeping the floors.
ああ。しかしなんで生徒に掃除とかさせるんだろうな。
確かにな。そもそも生徒が学校を掃除するなんて習慣があるのは日本を含めわずかな国だけで。
Yeah, that's really weird to me still. Like, I sort of get the idea, like, okay, you're teaching them a skill, but it's also their fucking environment that you're placing your kids in. And it's like, do you really trust your kids to clean the place well enough?
ああ、ストップ。一席ぶたなくていいから。んじゃ、後でな。
It's like you send your kids there to, learn. But just I guess it's the idea of priorities, but whatever. It doesn't really matter that much. It's just like,
あ、たく。
Time to get this finished and head to the club room.
Hmm?
I saw a scrap of paper lying on the floor next to the garbage bin. Someone had probably tried to throw it in the wastebasket and missed, and then left it there. I really wish they'd think about the people that had to do the cleaning before they did that. I took a quick look around. There's another suit named Tanaka right nearby, who was mopping up the floor. Fortunately, there's no one else around. Okay, let's try this. Oh boy. Alright, forgot about this. I visualized scrap of paper lifting off the ground. This is more difficult than you'd think. If you lost your concentration for even a moment, it wouldn't work.
どうだ、いけるか?
I took the scene I had imagined and tried to strike Tanaka with it. And then...
Yes.
Scrap of paper floated upward, just like I'd imagined. And then I floated it into the garbage can.
Nice.
So he's actually doing it now. I did a little victory pose. This doesn't seem like a delusion at the very least.
あれ?
Tanaka was looking around in surprise. She looked at me a little afraid.
ねえ、宮代くん。
あ、はい。なんですか?
今さ、なんか紙くずがね、勝手にゴミ箱に。
はあ。
Fantastic job, Miyashiro. Just say, no, I picked up a piece of paper. Are you a little tired? Maybe you should get some rest.
手も触れてないのにゴミ箱に入ったっていうか、ね
え。まさか何かの見間違いじゃないですか。
そうだよね。
Isn't she the really nice one? Oh, if they kill her, I'm gonna stop this game. No. I don't know. I'm just, my limited interactions with her, she actually might be one of my more favorite characters in this at the moment.
ゴミ捨ててきたいんですけど、いいですか?
ごめんね。
I took the garbage can out into the hallway.
もっとだ。
Chapter 7, Their Resistance to In Time for the Eroding Past.
みんな揃ってるか？
It had already been 3 days since Arimura and I had been attacked by the pyrokinetic. We'd been worried that she might attack us again, but until now, nothing had happened. Thanks to that, we'd finally calmed down. Today, I was feeling good enough to revisit what we knew about the case.
まず話を始める前に紹介。
チャオス、いつもニコニコ笑顔が一番、有村ひなえです。これからよろしくね。
Please don't put on the facade here. Come on.
こちらこそよろしく。パチパチパチ。
Pachi, 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 pachi. It's so hard to keep up with the way her mood seemed to change all the time. Zerka was applauding, but no one else was. Yasuki was playing or I don't know, some other game. Like she always did. She turned around to take one look at Arimura, then went back to her computer screen.
有村は別に新聞部に入るわけじゃなく、あくまで協力してくれるということで。
一応所属は文芸部なんで、でもまあ固いことは抜きにして、とりあえず来れるときは顔出すってことで、どうか一つ。
Really interesting. For what it's worth, I'd already told all the newspaper club members about Arimura's power.
ねえねえ、ひなちゃん、ちょっと聞いていい？いいよ。あ、でも3サイズは乙女の秘密。
Stop it. It's so obviously faked. It's sort of annoying.
有村の3サイズは別にな。
おい、こらてめえ貴様！
Yeah, I mean, just don't say anything at that point if you actually don't care. Their mood changed again.
ひなちゃんってさ、どれが本当なの？明るかったり、真面目だったり、怖かったり。そうだな。どれだと思う？
I mean, I think it's the one that's not blatantly putting up a facade at the very least.
やだな。そこまで真剣に考え込まれてもな。ただね、一つ言えるとしたらさ、嘘か本当か分かっちゃうっていうのはセリが思ってる以上にずっと大変だってこと。こうやってふざけてないとやってらんないくらいにね。
Which means that even if if we're saying this isn't a facade and it's just her, you know, trying to be lighthearted, then it also means that she's sort of messing with everyone via doing it. Oh. Erica seemed lost in thought and didn't really understand.
あ、そうそう、そこのあなた。
Katsuki jumped a little.
ねえねえ、彼女、君さ、1年だよね。あー、ごめん。できれば口に出して言ってもらえるかな。
No.
ああ、ひなちゃん、ダメだよ。はなちゃんは喋らないから。
Just saying it?
え？そうなの？
I guess that's a little bit more weird than Arimura's stuff.
それって喋れないってこと？
いや、そういうわけじゃないはずなんだけど、とにかく喋りたがらねえんだよ。だから俺たちもまだ一回も和樹の喋ってるとこ聞いたことなかったりしてな。
へえ、そうなんだ。
Arimura stared at Kazuki's face. Arimura, please do not take this as a challenge.
オッケーオッケー。和樹はなちゃんでいいんだよね。ってことは、はなでオッケー？じゃあはな、これからよろしく。
I thought Arimura might have found it difficult to get along with Kazuki, but maybe I was wrong? Since Kazuki didn't talk, it might actually make it easier for her, since she doesn't have to worry about knowing if she was lying.
それじゃあ早速始めるか。
待ってくれ。その前に。
遅れちゃってごめんなさい。
Oops. I saw the starting of a name with a case, but there's a couple possible options for that. Kurusu, okay. That's actually what I was thinking it probably would be. Kurusu opened the door and came inside. Is she also on team figure this shit out now at this point? Her injury had healed, and Dad had told her that it was okay for her to move around. So she'd come back to school today.
副部長。
もう話始まってる？
あ、いや、俺たちは別に例の事件についての話とかこれっぽっちも。
いいんだ伊藤。
あ？
クルスも一緒に事件の解明をしてくれることになった。
え、そうなのか？
ええ、みんなのお目付け役ってところね。
You could just explain, you're too deep in to stop now, so I'm gonna do what I can to make sure you don't die from your stupidity. Kurusu glanced at me for just a moment, worried. But it was only for a moment, then she was back to normal.
とにかくこれまでの事件について意見を聞かせてもらうわ。少しでもおかしなところがあれば遠慮なく指摘するからそのつもりで。
The meek attitude she'd had when she'd been hurt was gone. She's back to her usual self. Ito's shoulders slumped, but at the same time, he looked a little happy. She was always obnoxious and at times a little annoying, but this was the way everyone wanted Kurusu to be.
じゃあ全員揃ったところでミーティングを始めようと思うんだけど、先に一つ見ておいてほしいものがあるんだ。
お？なんだ？
まだ尾上とクルスにしかちゃんと見せてない。成功率も 100% じゃないから失敗するかもしれないけど。
Look, they looked at me in confusion. Nodded and grabbed a pen, put it on the table. Tried my best to focus. And just like that, scrap of paper, with the scrap of paper earlier, I imagined the pen moving.
問題はここからだ。いけるか。
As I focused as hard as I could, I slowly appeared in the corner of my eye.
よし、来た。
Now all that was left was to imagine my delusion infecting everyone else. The next moment, the pen started to jerk upward. Actually, is this something you literally cannot practice in private? Because you need to affect other people, right? Would that thing with the paper have not worked if, was it Tanaka? Tanaki? Whatever. If she hadn't been seeing it even out of the corner of her eye? The three of them raised their voices in surprise as the pen slowly moved upward. When I stopped imagining the floating pen, the D-sword disappeared from my field of vision and the pen slammed back down into the table.
おい、宮代！すげえ！すげえよ！
Okay, so here's the point to make. I don't think he's done anything throughout all this that has actively... There's been nothing I remember that indicated the stuff with the unlocking doors was this, basically. Based on this process that seems to be laid out here. At least that's my opinion based on my foggy memory of this.
言った通りまだ完璧じゃないんだけど。
いつの間にできるようになったんです？
尾上に協力してもらっていろいろとやってみたんだ。
Ito gasped in amazement. When the pyrokinetic attacked me, I was forced to accept that I really was a psychic. After that, I decided to master my power instead of running away from it. And I'd gone through a lot of trial and error to do so. At first, I tried to do it on my own, but that didn't go well. And then I remember that what lab coat had said. She said that a gigalomaniac accomplished a real boot by transmitting his delusions into the dead spots of another person's brain to create what she called a shared reality. That meant that if I didn't have something to share someone to share my delusion with, it wouldn't work, right? So when I started practicing with Serica, things began to go much better.
でも先輩、言っておきますけど、そういうのいい気になって使ったりするとろくなことになりませんからね。
有村さんの言う通りよ。
そのくらい分かってるよ。これは僕やみんなの身を守るためにやってるんだ。
ふーん。だったらいいんですけど。
I was telling the truth. I'd managed to turn back the pyrokinetic's flames at the last second. The only reason we survived. But that was only a coincidence, born out of desperation. If she's going to come after me again, I need to master my power. That's why I decided to practice like this.
だけどさ、なんでだろうね。
Suddenly, Serica frowned. She's fiddling with her Garofari strap like she always did when she's thinking about something.
なんでだろうって何がだ？
相変わらずいきなりね、セリカは。あなたの頭の中では話がつながってるのかもしれないけど。
ごめん。そのね、ほら、ひなちゃんは相手の話が嘘か本当かわかるんでしょ？で、タクは物が動かせる。人によって使える力に違いがあるのはなんでかなって。
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking about how does the telling the truth thing work in this? If the base concept of all of this is you create a delusion and you basically force everyone else to go along with it, how do you tell if someone's telling the truth or not? Are you constantly just like subconsciously deciding if it's the truth or not, and then the like reality warps to match that? I'm trying to think of like the logic from how we've explained that it works from that in the first place. The moving around objects makes sense to in a sense, but still. I never thought about that before. She had a point. Oh yeah, in my general thought process was how they've explained it makes me feel as though it shouldn't matter what reality you try to create. How they explain it makes it feel like it's fairly power agnostic, that you should be capable of doing basically anything that you're capable of imagining up via it, right? As long as you have whatever level of refined skill set to do that, right? Why do different people have different powers? And more importantly, not just why do different people have different powers? I'm sure it's something psychological. Why are people capable of manifesting it in different ways? And why can't they expand beyond that? Or are maybe people have some psychological element that sort of guides them into thinking, this is my power. And they sort of get into that idea of, this is my power, and they can't imagine themselves doing the other thing, which stops them from properly being able to do the other thing, because this is like 99% psychological, right? So if you subconsciously think, yeah, I can't do this other thing, then you won't be able to do it. But in reality, maybe you could, basically. Lapcoat hadn't said anything about that.
つうかさ、そもそもその能力自体いつからお前らに備わってたんだろうな。生まれつきか？
That's another thing I'd been wondering about.
宮代、お前はどうなんだ？
少なくとも僕自身はここ最近まで自分にそんな能力があることを自覚してなかった。だから正直わからない。
そんじゃあ有村は？
私は多分渋谷地震の後ですかね。あれ以降急に人の言葉の嘘がわかるようになったっていうか。
So in Arimura's case, she'd suddenly become able to tell if people were lying after the Shibuya Earthquake.
ってことはあの地震に何か関係があるのか？
I'd have to look into that eventually.
あと今のセリの疑問、どうして人によって能力が違うのかって話だけど、それについてはなんとなく思ってることがあって。
何何？
多分願望なんじゃないかなと。
願望？
そうです。私地震の時にちょっぴりそう思うことがありまして、で気づいたらこんな感じになってたっていうか。
そう思うことって？
やだなあ、だから本当のことか知りたいって話。言わせないでよ、恥ずかしい。
いや別に照れるとこじゃねえだろ。
そもそも本当のことが知りたいなんて一体何があったんだよ。
やだ先輩、やらしい。
なんでそうなる？
Pervert. I feel like that hasn't come up before.
そういうのは痛いけな乙女の秘密なんですよ。だから聞いちゃダメね。
Yeah, I feel like you've revealed enough. That's definitely the sort of thing that you don't press on because it's very personal. And it's almost definitely very personal based on how she's acting, right? Someone in her life that she wanted to know who was telling the truth or not, basically. When Arima was like this, I knew I wasn't going to get anything out of her.
とにかく一旦これまでのことを整理してみようか。ニュージェネの狂気の再来事件、その被害者には明らかに共通するポイントがあったよな。
っていうとあれだね。
そう、前にも推測した通り全員何らかの能力者だということだ。最初の事件、こっちみんな被害者とその特徴は。
Don't look at me was there another one before? I think? Yeah.
そう、多分予知能力があったってことだ。
Yeah, that's another one. How does that, like, how do you create a shared reality that is predicting the future unless you're impacting so many people that you can force that to be true? I guess it depends what you're predicting.
次は音漏れ炭。被害者とその特徴は。
This one easily makes the most sense with how we've had it explained.
トランスっていうと歌を聴いた人の気持ちがうわーって気持ちよくなることかな。
Yeah, basically her music got people high.
まあそんなようなものですかね。
Oh, there's another thing about the streamer. How is he able to predict the future? You could say something like, "Oh, he was affecting all the people streaming," but we explicitly got something from the music lady that her stuff didn't affect people when it was recorded and just distributed online, right? Does it have to be live? Is it because it wasn't live or because it was distributed online? I guess it would I guess between the two it would have to be that it was because it wasn't live, right?
つまり相手の感情を歌で誘導できたってことだな。で、僕たちが目撃した回転デッド、被害者とその特徴は。
Recline spines. Again, that the ones where you need to.
多分柿田って人はテレパシーを持っていたんだ。
The weird one with the predicting the future is like, how do you affect the future rather than the here and now outside of forcing a chain of events that leads to that, which is the only thing that makes sense. And then there's Arimura's in this one where it's like, if what you're doing is you're basically taking stuff from your mind and forcing it onto other people, how do you have a power that lets you pull stuff from their mind? How is that the result of what has been explained? Those are the most confusing ones to me, because it seems like it's reverse order of how it should be able to work, unless you're, like I said before, doing something along the lines of, it's not really you know the truth, it's you're creating a shared reality where your subconscious thought that it is the truth or a lie becomes true. That sort of thing. And same idea of this, I guess.
ええ、その通りです。私にはそう言ってました。
そして学園祭で起きたごっつぁんです。被害者とその特徴は
Oh yeah, that's what they're calling the Watabe thing.
そう、渡部が有名になったスクープ写真は全てありえない角度や場所から撮られているものばかりだった。多分連写だったんだろう。
That's another one. Where it's like you're taking... I presume it's psychic photography because he's taking it from other people's minds, right? The image from other people's minds that were there before in their memory. That sort of thing. Mm.
やっぱり私が言った通りですよ。どの能力者も願望が入ってる気しませんか？
I mean, I get that concept, so I'm sort of getting the feeling that from a logical point of view, they're probably never going to explain those. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be outright wrong about that. But I sort of feel like they're never going to explain those, and it's more along the lines... And this isn't unreasonable, maybe I'm expecting too much, in terms of how much they've thought it through, and from the details and whatnot. But... it feels more like they have the idea of we create a shared reality. So basically, we can do anything. That sort of thing. Which isn't the word. I'm not saying that in itself is a bad idea. But there's definitely explanations on how it works where it would be nice if they explained how it worked. Because it feels like it's going the reverse direction. Like, it's like if you explain how a river flows down a mountain, and then you find a river that's flowing up, it's like, but your explanation, that doesn't make sense.
願望か。こっちみんなの大谷は、もともとニコニア動画で生放送していて。
Well, this seems like... Okay, yeah, we are able to... We're putting stuff up. I thought, oh, we're gonna focus on this blank core. He wanted to become... Yeah, I guess that is generic enough. Yeah.
音漏れ炭の高柳は新庄さんの話だと確か
That one does match. Admittedly, some of these, become popular.
回転デッドの柿田さんは
そういう話はあんまりしませんでした。けど仕事でいつも裏切りとか騙し合いとかあったみたいで。でも能力を持ってからはその心配もなくなったって。
That makes sense, I suppose. Become famous to be able to predict the future is a bit of a jump, but it's not unreasonable.
そしてごっつぁんですの渡部か。
I guess it's probably something a lot more specific, and the become famous is just something, is an incredibly simplified version of it.
なるほどな。こうしてみると、
つまり願望がその人の能力に影響してるっていうことね。
Why do I have pyrokinesis then? Was there like rubble during the earthquake? Oh, maybe it's something like that. Rubble fell on someone and it's like, oh, I want to save you, I can't move this, or something like that.
ってことは宮代のその能力も何かの願望が現れてるってことか？
手を触れずに物を動かせたらとか、そんな風に考えたことあるんですか、先輩？
I could totally imagine something in the earthquake, like I said, like rubble fell on someone, maybe Serica. And he's like, I gotta get you out of here, or something like that. And then he got the power and he was able to move it and she was able to get out.
いや、僕は。
I can't think of any reason why I want that power. If something like that did happen, like rubble, You think he would remember that? It feels like that would be a significant portion of the earthquake event, Dan.
あれじゃないタク。ほらあの時タクって地震の後ずっと寝込んでたじゃない？
I guess that makes some sense.
そういえばあの頃のタクルは歩くのも大変だったから。
Just like Ursa said, I'd been badly injured during the earthquake. Even after I finally woken up from my coma, just walking was incredibly painful. It was bad enough that it would take 10 minutes just to grab something a few feet away. I hated that, and I'd wished 1,000 times that the thing I was trying to get would just come to me.
それじゃあ、あれが僕の能力に影響しているっていうことなのか。
Certainly adds up.
なるほどな。願望が能力に現れる説ってのはほぼ正解と考えて良さそうだな。
それじゃああの女、僕たちを襲ったあの女の能力も何らかの願望ってことになるのか。
何かを燃やしたいと思ったってこと？
そこまで思い詰めるほど燃やしたいものってなんだろうな。
Me? Again, I sort of feel like she thought that I was someone, and then was like at the end was like, oh shit, okay, never mind.
お芋とか？
冗談言ってる場合かよ。
いえ先輩、セリは本気でそう思ってます。
マジか。
なんかおかしなこと言った？
Yeah, you did, Sarah.
まあいい。あの女がどうしてパイロキネシスを持つようになったかは今は置いとこう。もう一つ、あの女について考えたいことがある。大事なことなんだ。
I looked at the faces of everyone in the room.
あいつがこれまでの猟奇殺人事件の犯人かどうかってことだ。
Oh no. No. So, no, obviously not. Someone who sees us and is just like, fire, die, would not have the wherewithal to do these really... What's the best way to phrase it? Discreet methods of killing that try to hide how they're dying, while also making it in sort of a big showcase. She had clearly been trying to kill us, but that didn't mean she's behind all the murders. I look back at the board.
カズキ、例のものを頼め。
I took the image that I'd asked Kazuki to print out for me.
ニュージェネの狂気の再来の話題で埋もれてしまってるけど、ここ最近渋谷で連続放火事件が起きてる。
Everyone seemed to know this, so they nodded.
それが起こった場所とこれまでの事件の場所を比較してみようと思うんだ。まず最初の事件、こっちみんな。現場はここ。それに連続放火事件の現場を重ねる。
Interesting. Is that all the arson?
わあ、すごいね。
Do we have any time frames? Because I could imagine us taking the time frames of the actual arson and sort of tracking, give or take, like sort of where they were. Not that you couldn't like go halfway across the town in one day, but still, you could sort of track where they were operating out of, or dragging themselves along to at a given time based on the arson case stuff.
だろ。次は第2の事件、音漏れ炭。ここに連続放火事件の現場を重ねると。
Interesting.
おいおい。
そして第3の事件、回転デッドが発生したラブホテル。このラブホテルの周りでも不審火が異常に発生。
確かに集中。
そうなんだ。そして第4の事件、そしてそれに連続放火事件の現場を重ねてみると。
Oh wow, that's a lot that's actually right in, like between the middle and high school.
なんかすごいですね。
だろ。マップ全体を見てもらえばもっとよくわかる。
Can you... But, are those the only arson cases? Is it just around there? Does the timeline of them match up? Is it after? Is it potentially something where they like something happened, they hear about saying, I'm gonna go kill this person, because they think that they operated there, so they go around there setting fire, and they're just constantly chasing after whoever's actually doing the killings because they're after them or something like that.
最初にこれに気づいた時は僕も驚いたよ。で、これらのデータから考えると、
ニュージェネの狂気の再来事件と不審火との間にはなんか関係があるかもしれないってことか。
It does seem as though, yes, connection is a strong conclusion to come to at this point.
ああ、この通り、偶然にしてはあまりにも場所が一致しすぎてる。あの女との因果関係を疑っていいんじゃないかと思う。
When I finished, Erica said, Wow, you're amazing, Daku. But everyone else seemed lost in thought.
何か異論でもあるか？
異論とまではいかないけど、ちょっといいかしら。
Kirsty raised her head. I mean, just say it.
うん、何でも言ってくれ。
ね。
She stood up in such a way as to not put pressure on her injury, then moved in front of the board.
再確認なんだけれど、タクルたちを襲った女の人の能力っていうのは。
I mean, we already literally said it multiple times, right?
そう、炎を使う能力だったのよね。
あ
あ。I mean, that might be... Well, she definitely tried to kill you. Whether she's a serial killer is a...
でも、これまでの殺人事件では炎なんて一回も使われていないじゃない。最初がこっちみんなだっけ？
No, this isn't the worst episode for this to happen on because it really is catching me up on a lot of random details after not doing this for a while.
次が音漏れた？そして回転デッド。この学園で起こったのはごっつぁんですね。殺人事件にこんな名前をつけるなんて不謹慎だわ。ほら見て、どれも炎なんて出てこないでしょ？あれれ？確かにそうだね。
Yeah, it's not that difficult of a thing to notice. Chris had caught one of the weak points in my argument. Well, I think there's a connection. I don't think she's the killer, right? I thought that was strange too. None of the murders had involved fire, which means that we had very little evidence to suggest that she was the actual killer.
なあ、こういうのはどうだ？発火女は自分の能力を試していたとか。
試す？
Doubt. You mean on the other ones? Because the fact that she attacked so quickly, just with like fire without even thinking about it and just like in a rage, really makes me feel as though there isn't any subtlety beyond her actions.
ああ、発火能力を身につけるまで自分で自分の能力がよく分かっていなくてさ、いろんなことを試してたんだ。それで殺害方法にいくつものパターンがあった。
なるほど。しんちゃん頭いいね。
Sarkis impressed, but
でもそれってちょっと無理ないですか？
Arimura said it before I could.
そうか？
いくらなんでも強引すぎるかなって。
私もそう思うけど。
そうか。
Not impossible, but definitely something that it's definitely something that feels like an explanation to connect a conclusion with the evidence rather than using the evidence to come to a conclusion, basically. That feel accurate? Hello, police! Police just went by, sirens and all that sort of fun stuff. No, I don't think there's a serial killing in the town I live in. But yeah, that's something people do all the time in real life, where Because, I mean, if you listen to most conversations on a lot of topics, a lot of people basically spend a lot of their efforts in terms of stuff where the world works in a certain way, the world needs to work in a certain way. This is what I believe it should be because this is right, this is how it should be, and they basically, this is how, like, rather than taking the evidence of everything in front of them and coming to a conclusion based off that, or even a lack of conclusion, being able to admit that you don't know, you need to have a conclusion, and there needs to be this conclusion, usually something that you want to be true, and then you try to force them to connect, and that's more what that is. It's not impossible, but it's not a conclusion you should really be coming to, or an assumption you should be coming to, based on the actual evidence. And there really isn't anything necessarily strong enough there to force us to pursue it as a potential possibility. Even if we're saying, like, it might be true, we're not going to say that. Maybe there's some worth looking into it. I don't think there's anything there that suggests it strongly enough to look into it more either. Everyone fell silent. We'd only just started, but it's too much we didn't know.
あの女が犯人だとするなら、なぜ炎を使わないで殺人を行ったのか。そして、なぜあんな殺し方ができたのか。いや、待てよ。
See, I guess my point as to why she's probably not the killer is still the point that you could argue that if she's able to use those other powers, right, to do the stuff to cause the effects at the locations in serial killings, where if you wanted to say that sort of logic of was using killings to test their powers or something like that, that doesn't really make sense, because the killings themselves were a lot more subtle, and it felt like they were a lot more in control and sophisticated and advanced than show up, fire, right? It feels like, in a similar sense to some of the other stuff I've talked about today, you're going in the opposite direction. I suddenly got an idea.
なあ有村、ちょっと聞きたいんだけど。
なんです？
お前結構久野里さんと一緒にいたよな。
好きで一緒にいたわけじゃないですけど
Are
ね。
you here because you wanted to? I want to be here? Arimaris discusses plane. She must have really hated lab coat.
久野里さんは能力について研究してるんだろう。何か言ってなかったか？ギガロマニアックスが持てる能力の数とか。
数ですか？
ああ、今まで気づかなかったけど、能力者は一人で一つの能力しか持つことができないとか決まってるんだろうか。
さあ、どうなんでしょう。でも確かにそんな制限、久野里さんから聞いたことはないですね。
リアルブートの理屈から考えれば、妄想さえうまくコントロールできれば、どんな能力だって使えると思うんだよな。
Ta-da!
つまり一人で複数の能力を持つことも可能なんじゃないかってことなんだけど。
Ito put his hands on his chin and thought.
宮代たちを襲った女は単なるパイロキネシストじゃないってことか。
Well, presumably no psychic is just their power. That's the point.
あくまでも可能性の一つだけど、どうだろう。
まだ決定的とは言えないわね。
だったらさ、犯人の女には別の能力を持った仲間がいるという可能性もあるんじゃないか。
I think it's safe to say that, based on the evidence we have, that people can have multiple powers. It might be an extremely difficult concept, just theoretically, it should be something, like he said, something you obviously should be able to do. It might be a very difficult thing to do, like subconsciously, it might be nearly impossible, as far as we know, or it could be easy. It could be like some subconscious block that forces you into using a specific power if you want to use it, because that's just how your mind works, or something like that. It could be something like that. But the possibility of having multiple powers feels like a given at this point. Anything beyond that, that's up for debate.
仲間？ああ、そっか。複数犯ってことだな。
She did not seem like someone who was working with others. Let's say that. She could be. She could be basically someone that's being more like henchman-y and being sent out to basically go do damage or something like that. Then again, given how much they feel like they're trying to keep this, like, the psychic part of it sort of under, or the fact that they're trying to be somewhat subtle, sending her out to do damage does not feel like their MO at this point, I suppose.
それとあとは最初に戻ってしまうけど、パイロキネシストは事件とは無関係で、犯人は全く別の誰かという可能性。
その場合、タクルたちが襲われた事件とこれまでの連続殺人事件は別のもの？
うん。
Well, again, so I guess my current theory would be, I don't remember exactly what she said, but I remember her seeing us and just being like, kill. I'm guessing she saw, psychics, kill. And the fact that we have arsons happening. Okay, you also have to consider the fact that arsons are happening around that, right? I'd love to hear the timeline of the arsons relative to it. Are they at the same time, before and after? Because if they're before and after, you'd sort of be able to get a feeling of, yeah, they're probably working together, because the connection implies that it's not a reaction. Or if they're all before, then you could say that would be even weirder. I'm not sure. That again would sort of feel like it's sort of flipped on its head. But you could say that the killing was a reaction to that, maybe? But if it happened after, then the fires were a reaction to the killing, presumably. But if it happened before and after, then you can sort of remove the reaction element entirely, and that means the connection would probably mean that they have to be working together, right? But if you can potentially have that reaction element to what's happening, you could also have something along the lines of saying that they're unrelated, that they're not part of the same group, but they are aware of each other to the extent that they could react to one or the other, right? One or the other's actions, that sort of thing. Shoot, maybe the serial killing is a way to cut. So if you're saying that it's if the arsons happen before and then the killing happened after, maybe it's specifically an excuse to cover that stuff up, or they're doing it in specific locations in order to actively. I don't remember. No one meant. It would have to be afterwards, right? The arsons would have at least for the school one, right? If there was a bunch of like arsons happening in the school area right around when the festival's about to happen, right? Then that would have been a big deal. People would have been talking about that. They might have talked about it, and I might not be remembering, but I don't remember them talking about it. So, wouldn't that basically require the fact that it feels like that would basically require, for how the school stuff went down, for the arsons to have happened when everything was shut down afterwards. And it's part of why it's not like a big deal even right now. There's literally arsons in between the high school and middle school. That feels significant. There's like 5 of them. Feels like the police would be like searching the fuck around for what happened there. But either way, it feels like it has to be after, right? Because of that specifically. But yeah, I think the timeline would give us so much information on those arsons. There are too many possibilities to really know what was going on.
ねえ、とりあえずこの件は保留にしない？多分結論は出ないわ。
そうだな。とりあえず今はこのまま置いとこう。
宮代と有村は警察に話したんだよな。お前らを襲った女のこと。
はい。
警察から何か情報はないのか？
The night we were attacked, we contacted Shinjo and told him what had happened along with the description of our attacker. Arimura had said that she helped draw a composite sketch too. Police decided to look for her as a suspect in the arson case. If they could find her, they'd arrest her for that. Once they had her in custody, then they could find out if she was responsible for the murders as she burned down the police station.
何か分かったら連絡をくれるはずなんだけど、特に何もない。女の特定に至ってないんだと思う。
そっか。じゃあ女に関する推理は今のところここまでしかできないな。
だと思う。
My throat was dry from all the talking, so I looked inside my bag, which makes for a decent place to end for today. I know this probably isn't the longest, but at this point I'm more just trying to get a little bit back into the swing of things. So it feels like I'm, one, not forcing myself, and two, not doing things at a pace where I don't feel as though I'm going beyond where my interests lie. It's interesting with the visual novels, and I think this might be so I've talked about it before, where a lot of visual novels feel like they're like 1.5 times longer than they need to be, where everything feels like it's dragged out longer than it really needs to be pacing wise. And I will reiterate, that's still probably true. They're still enjoyable and whatnot, but typically it feels like they're longer than they need to be. At least in my mind. Which I'm starting to think maybe that's because I just don't have as much time in my life as I used to, where it sort of feels like when things go on a bit longer, then, oh, come on, let's get to the next, like, let's move a little bit faster. It sort of feels like it's wasting my time a little bit. I can still enjoy them, but there is that element to it, visual novels specifically, where the pacing can always feel a bit slow, where you don't have the benefit of some sort of gameplay interactivity section. Like, this was, I'd say, pretty good, because you had the element of working through the mystery of, it was paced and structured in a way that I thought this was pretty good, where it didn't really get to a point where it was like, okay, let's get to the next thing, because it sort of let me just stop and think about each one, sort of put things together, and it had that element of the bulletin board, which I think is good. I still think the initial tutorial for it was stupid, just because of what information they want you to know. But since then, it's been fine, because they've been actually using information that you know, and isn't like some big hidden thing, or isn't something that you are assumed to know rather than actually should know, necessarily. That being said, I thought this was good, because it was well-paced, well-structured, but there's a lot of stuff in visual novels where even if stuff is happening, where it's not necessarily a situation where, that's the best way to phrase it, you don't have the change of pace of gameplay to story and stuff like that to sort of keep things feeling fresh throughout, and you could realistically do a 3, 4, 7 hour session like I've done with JRPGs sometimes, because I have done 7, 8 hours in a day of recording for JRPGs and not been bored by the pacing and whatnot. Trails series is the big one I've done that for. But visual novels have this thing where they don't have that change of pace element, so pacing becomes so much more important. And when you have someone like me who feels like I'm getting less and less free time to really do stuff, I value my time more and more. When you have stuff that makes me feel like, come on, let's pace this up a little bit quicker, it does start to feel like it starts to grate on your enjoyment of the game. It's definitely a negative, let's say that. And it's not necessarily this game. I'm just sort of noticing it from most visual novels I do. And it's an observation partly because I've been doing the Great Ace Attorney 2 recently, and I have had no problem with doing 2-hour sessions of recording that whenever I've sat down to record that. Those go by no problem. But when I've been playing this, I've been playing Fate before I've been doing this. It's not like I haven't enjoyed it, but there's something about just pure visual novels, at least in the current state of my life. And I'm only saying this because I've been thinking about it more in depth because of the sort of break, and I've been thinking about how I want to do the channel. And it could very well be a me thing rather than a visual novel thing. But there are elements to them that make them more difficult to go through in their entirety if you are strapped for time relative to just a normal video game that has that sort of change of pace gameplay to story, and you have that sort of trade-off that's constantly happening. It's very interesting. And this episode has probably been a good example of basically having a little bit of a gameplay element via like putting stuff and whatnot to give it a little bit of a change of pace throughout the actual scene that you're in at that point. And I'm not saying that the story itself can't have change of paces within it as well, but it's not as dramatic and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a hard thing to explain, so I hope I'm getting my idea across. Well, again, I still want to complete this, but it's something I've been thinking about recently. That I'm starting to realize that I feel like visual novels just aren't hitting that, like, they're not getting that groove, or that, like, they're not hitting that spot for me that makes them work for me nearly as well as they did when I was younger, in a different place in my life. So, it's an interesting thought that I've had with regards to that I just felt like sharing, because it's a very relevant thought in my mind as I move forward with how I'm going to do the channel. So, I'm still enjoying it. It's still very interesting. But that's just what I'm going to say. I haven't come to any conclusions or anything like that. And I know, as I'm saying this, it sort of sounds like I'm leaning towards a conclusion. But, yeah, I'm going to stop rambling, because I'm just rambling at this point. So, I'll see you all next time on Chaos Child. Drive safely, everyone.